Hey guys, last time we talked about Gideon, but we didn't finish the story. So this is Gideon's story, part 2. One night the Lord told Gideon to take down the altar his father had built for a pretend god Baal, and to cut down an Asherah pole. And the Asherah pole was made for another god people wanted to worship. The Israelites had started believing in these fake gods that couldn't do anything, and that's why God had been angry with them. He is the only real and true God, and these people were praying and giving offerings of pieces of wood and to statues that can't do or hear anything. So Gideon took 10 of his servants at night and tore down all the altars of the fake gods. The people were mad when they realized Gideon had wrecked their God's altars, but they decided that if Baal was really a god, he could punish Gideon. Of course, nothing ever happened to Gideon because Baal isn't a real god. He was fake. Gideon still wanted to make sure that God would save the Israelites, so he asked for another sign. He placed a piece of wool from a sheep on the ground. If there was dew only from the fleece, and all the ground around it was dry, then he would know that God would save them. When Gideon checked the wool in this day's morning, it was soaking wet. And the ground, guess what it was? It was dry. Still, Gideon asked for one more sign. This time, he asked that the fleece would be dry and the ground would be wet. Surely enough, the next morning, it was just as Gideon asked. So Gideon gathered up an army and started out for the Midianite camp. Gideon was probably feeling pretty good about his army and all the things that he had to control. He had lots of men to help him fight, and God promised he would help them win. God had something a little different in mind. He told Gideon he had too many men in his army. He knew that Israel would think they defeated the Midianites completely by themselves, without God's help. So God said to Gideon, "Announce to the people, anyone who's afraid may go home now." Amazingly, 22,000 of the men left. That's a lot of people. More than half of the whole army went home. Only 10,000 stayed. Gideon still felt alright. At least they had 10,000 people. Right? Not for long. The Lord told Gideon he still had too many men. They went down to the water for a drink. The Lord told him, "Separate the men that drink the water like a dog, and the ones that get on their knees and drink from their hands." It's surprising, but only 300 men got on their knees and drank from their hands. All the rest looked silly, drinking just like dogs. God told Gideon that he only wanted the 300 men, and the rest were supposed to go home. This way, when the Israelites won the battle against the Midianites, they would know for sure that God was in control with only 300 men. Gideon didn't know how God was going to help them win. There were so many Midianites against only 300 of Israelites. It seemed impossible, right? But no. During the night, Lord spoke to Gideon because Gideon wasn't getting any sleep. He was very nervous. He said, "If you are still afraid that I'm going to help you win, go down in the valley with your servant Purah, where Midianites are staying, and listen to what they're saying. You'll feel much better after that." Guess what Gideon did? He was still afraid, and took Purah and snuck down to the Midianite camp. Just as he arrived, he heard one of them talking to his friend about a dream he had. He was saying, "I dreamt that a loaf of bread came rolling into our camp. It came so fast that it ran right into our tents and made it fall. Over." His friend responded, "This must mean the sword of Gideon, and that God will help him defeat the Midianites." As soon as Gideon heard this, he worshipped God and ran straight back to the camp. He returned and called out, "Get up, the Lord has given us the Midianite camp." He divided all the men into 3 groups and gave them all trumpets and empty jars with torches. Gideon and the men surrounded the camp in 3 groups. When Gideon started to blow his trumpet, the rest followed. They blew their trumpets and yelled, for the Lord and for Gideon. They broke the jars they were carrying, holding onto the torches with one hand and the trumpet in the other hand, shouting, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." When the Midianites heard this, they started yelling and running around. Then, when all the trumpets started again, the Lord caused the Midianites to start freaking out. And they started to turn on each other with their swords. And they basically killed their own people. The rest that got away were captured by the men of Ephraim by the Jordan River, because Gideon had sent messengers ahead to let them know the Midianites were coming. That was the day God had saved Gideon and defeated the Midianites. Without God, none of this was possible. Right now, during the quarantine and the coronavirus situation, we also have to be as brave as Gideon and rely on God to help us. I hope after this, Gideon learned his lesson and stopped being scared and worrying. He became brave. With God, nothing is impossible. Next time you're in a tough situation, know that God can give you strength and He wants to help you. Just ask Him and He will.